Hello, everybody. I hope you're doing fine today. Our topic is interesting, at least for me, because I was involved a lot in IT over the last 4 or 5 years, and specifically in a project where we at PRC, we used to outsource a lot of IT services, and most of those services are in-house now. So I've been through all of this over the last, let's say, 10 years. Actually, we started with a lot of services outsourced, and then we developed a lot of those in-house. So I hope my experience will be beneficial for all of you attending today. So let's get started. IT outsourcing. This is based on GTAC number 7, the 2nd edition. And this topic appears in part 3, domain 2. This might be like a small topic on the exam. It's not a big topic, but I see this topic as being important when we're preparing for part 1 as well. For the domain 5, when we cover risks and controls. This is somehow also related to these because we discuss a lot of risks and controls in this GTAC. So here, these are the, let's say, the main topics that we will be discussing today. Reasons for outsourcing, risks related to outsourcing, types of outsourcing, and outsourcing life cycle. And if anyone could help me out here, like before we get into any of the slides we have today, what do you think is the main reason that drives companies to outsource IT services? What would be like the main reason, or let's say the main 3-4 reasons that pushes companies towards outsourcing? So why do companies outsource IT services? Why not develop them in-house? IT usually is very complicated. Like when we say IT projects, they are usually very complicated. They require a lot of let's say knowledge and skills that may be like very expensive or time consuming to develop. So by outsourcing those services, we are reducing costs and we are getting, let's say, quality knowledge. We're getting people who have a lot of knowledge in that field, more than what we could afford to have. I'm seeing the answers that I'm getting here on the question box. Costs, capabilities, time consuming, cost and project management, better expertise and know-how. Yeah, all valid. And from my end, I would add one more top reason is risk. Risk in that we might end up wasting a lot of resources and eventually failing. That's number one. And then number two, when it comes to risk, is that if things go wrong, they go really, really wrong. Like servers going out of service, denial of service attacks, hackers. If you think of the magnitude of risks related to IT, it's huge. And when you outsource all of your IT, let's say you're mitigating all of these risks. You're putting them on the shoulders of someone else to take care of them. That would be, in my opinion, one of the main reasons for outsourcing. And of course, there are many that we will discuss as we go on. These are the services that are usually outsourced. I think most of them are clear. Let's just go over them and clarify anything that needs clarification. Application development and maintenance. This is the main type of, let's say, IT services that are usually outsourced. Development and maintenance. They were usually very time consuming and very expensive. So they are usually like, let's say, the first candidate for outsourcing. Infrastructure management, like servers, etc. Help desk function. Help desk function is, let's say, IT personnel who are mainly responsible for solving problems, any problems related to hardware or software within the organization. Independent testing and validation. In some cases, we might, as an organization, decide to do the development ourselves, but we might ask an independent company to do the testing and validation for the applications that we have developed. Or in some cases, we might ask one company to do the development and another company to do the testing and validation. Data center management. If we are talking banks, they might have several data centers, and it is a general practice to outsource those centers. Systems integration, when you have a company that's been operating for several years, they might have been through a lot of phases where they have developed one system here, one system for inventory, another system for accounting, another system for customer service, and they might want to integrate those services together or those systems together, and these are usually big projects as well. Research and development, managed security, and cloud computing. Cloud computing is becoming more and more the norm today. And managed security is also, let's say, the norm is to outsource these services. So these are the services that are usually outsourced. And this is the outsourcing life cycle. This is our starting point here. So this is strategic fit and sourcing evaluation. We will go through these phases or steps later on today. Let's just go over them quickly. So we start with evaluation, decision-making process, tender process, implementation, monitoring, renegotiation, and reversibility. And as you can see here, implementation might seem like the most expensive, the most time-consuming, the most important step, but actually, if things go right here before we reach the implementation phase, this is usually easy. But if things go wrong here in this section here, well, this is definitely going to go wrong. We will see this later on. So this is the life cycle. These are the life cycle steps. And what we do in this GTAG is cover the risks and controls related to each of these phases. So let's go back a little bit. So our overview was reasons for outsourcing. We went over that, let's say, quickly, and outsourcing risks, types of outsourcing, and outsourcing services, outsourcing life cycle. So we will cover this now, and later on we'll get back to the reason for outsourcing, which we have covered now quickly. So outsourcing life cycle risks and control considerations. And so now we will be covering those for each of the steps. Strategic fit and sourcing evaluation. So the key word here is evaluation. We want to evaluate whether the company or organization who's going to do the outsourcing, let's say the service provider. Let's refer to the company that will provide us with the outsourcing, the IT services as the service provider from now on. So we need to evaluate whether they have the capability, the ability, the reliability to do what we want them to do. Assess strategic context and whether benchmarking and other supporting market information is reliable and complete. So do we need to benchmark? And if we do need to benchmark, do we have reliable and complete information for that benchmarking process? Benchmarking between, let's say, the options that we have to select what would be the best option to go with. More on that later on. Determine whether there are adequate IT governance processes in place to guide outsourcing considerations and alignment with business outsourcing goals. And this is usually where things start to go wrong. If we need to know why we are outsourcing, we need to be very clear about those reasons why we are outsourcing. What are our goals? If that is not clear, the whole process could go wrong. So this should be clear to, let's say, all parties involved. And let's say our goal as internal auditors is to make sure that there is a process, an IT governance process to guide the outsourcing, let's say, operation, all of it from its start, where we're still evaluating, to the end, where we're considering reversibility. Confirm whether stakeholder involvement and process ownership are clear and aligned. And here we get into politics. I've seen this a lot where, let's say the organization, we have let's say a financial manager, an HR manager, what other functions, operation manager, let's say. The financial manager is well known for being having a very strong personality, always getting what he wants. And the HR manager, let's say, is relatively new in the organization. So he's not, let's say, yet well established in her position or in his position. If we don't have a clear and aligned ownership and responsibility and involvement, the financial manager will end up having, let's say, everything he wanted in the system to be done exactly the way he or she wanted it to be done. And the HR manager will not have, let's say, that much of a control of how things are going. If we let politics control the project, we need to be very clear in terms of like having a clear process of who should be involved, in what stage they should be involved, how much they should be involved. Another thing that I have noticed personally in terms of involvement, or who should be involved, is involving end users. The more end users are involved in a IT outsourcing project, the clearer things are. Let's say, the less back and forth there is between the service provider and the organization. So this is very important right from the beginning. If we at the organization are not clear who should be involved, things will go wrong. Consider the service provider's client base, experience, and reputation for reliability. Of course, here reliability is the key word. And why client base? Client base, again, I've seen this in reality where we have an organization, let's call it company A, okay? And company A had a long-term contract with a service provider, with the IT service provider, and the IT service provider was a relatively new company. Within 3-4 years, that company grew very fast, but the problem was that it grew in a direction that is way, like very, let's say, in a totally different direction from what we as company A wanted them to let's say, provide for us. Like, for example, company A wanted to focus on, let's say, developing accounting, inventory systems, but the service provider was going to in the direction of helping very small companies, which did not require such systems. So they were not interested in developing that side of the system. They were more interested in developing like the smaller things like customer service and customer relations management, and let's say the management of like smaller systems. So company A ended up having to look for a different service provider because of the client base of the service provider, because the service provider was going in a direction that is very different from where we expected things to be going for that company. So this is one point, like, are they similar? Does the service provider have customers that are similar to us, that require services similar to the services that we require? And in some cases, are our competitors clients for the service provider? That could be a very high risk in that case. If, let's say, one of our key competitors is a client for that service provider. So these are, let's say, the main points when it comes to client base. Reliability, as Kamal mentioned, we want to make sure that this service provider has the capabilities, the knowledge, the skills, the hardware, software, controls, backup plans, governance that we could rely on. Because if they don't have that, we're in big trouble. So let's move to the second step, which is decision-making process and business case. So after evaluation, let's say we have 3 or 4, let's say, service providers that we are evaluating. The next step would be taking a decision on which provider to go with. And these are the key points that we, let's say, as internal auditors need to have in mind. Assess whether information in the detailed analysis is reliable and considers all business risks and implementation risk. So we have business risks here and implementation risk, and we need information to be reliable. The analysis, we need it to be reliable. If our decision is based on unreliable analysis, we will definitely things will definitely go wrong. We need to have the right information to do the analysis. ascertain whether governance and approval processes are transparent, documented, and completed. Transparent is another key word here that we need to focus on for a minute. In such decisions, when we're taking outsourcing decisions, it's usually not one person making the decision. It's usually a group, a team, a committee, and when things go wrong, responsibilities may not be very clear. So the process, the decision-making process should be like the approval process should be clear, transparent, like there shouldn't be any pressure on anyone to take a certain decision or go for a certain, let's say, provider. It should be clear why we are selecting that provider, what are the reasons, and in case things go wrong, it's clear who took the decision and what was the criteria for taking that decision, so that we know who was really responsible for that decision. Documented, again, this is related to transparency in that we need to know how things are going, how decisions are being made, and of course, completed. We mean here the process is completed. Determine whether appropriate parties and experts are included in the evaluation process. Gut feeling. One of the main reasons IT projects in general and IT outsourcing projects fail is when managers depend on or rely on their gut feeling in taking decisions. We need experts. We need experts. We need people who know what they're doing, who have IT background, programming background, project management background, who know the industry well. Not, like, let's say, unfortunately, the majority of managers do not have all the knowledge that is needed to take such an important and expensive and costly decision. So we need experts, whether from within the organization or from outside the organization. Let me give you an example of how things could go wrong because we don't have experts. Let's call it company X this time, developed a system that cost them around $200,000. It took them around 2 years to develop that system. And once they finished the whole system and they wanted to go live with it, they decided to consult with an IT company on is the system reliable, what their opinion is about the system before they go live. Should they go live, or should they still test the system further before they go live? And the consulting company's reply was, your system will be outdated in 6 months. In 6 months, the system will be outdated. So that is like a huge mistake. That is a very expensive thing to fix. Imagine that company going live with that system, and that system being, let's say, going out of service after 6 months. That would be a disaster that could, let's say, in some cases, lead to bankruptcy. So experts are very important in taking such decisions. Determine whether other major stakeholders are kept informed. And the key word here is informed, like who should be informed, like internal audits. Should they be informed on such projects or not? How involved they should be. Assess management's contingency plans if the outsourcing initiative fails at various stages. This is also very important. Do we have such plans? How detailed are they? How up-to-date are these plans? How do we make sure they are always up-to-date and relevant? Evaluate whether estimates of failure and the probable impacts are considered in the business case or when comparing options among providers. So failure, estimates of failure. Like if things go wrong, how wrong could they go? What could be the cost of, let's say, stopping the project at the implementation stage? Like what would be the cost if we consider to like stop the whole project? What would be the cost if we decide, let's say, 2 years after starting with the project to end our contract with the current service provider and go with a different provider and continue the project with someone else, another company? Evaluate sensitivity of cost benefits to assumptions. We might be making certain assumptions at the start of the project, and we need to know how things could change if those assumptions change. Like let's say one of the assumptions is that the system, we will need the system to be, let's say we're developing a new application and we need to have it ready in 2 years. So that's our assumption, that we have 2 years to finish the project. What if we decide that later on that no, 2 years is too long, we need to finish the project in 18 months? How would that affect the cost benefit of the project? So this is one of the assumptions. Of course, there could be a lot of other assumptions that we need to take into consideration. Identify key performance measures and data sources. We need to know, what to measure and how to measure it to know whether things are going as planned or not. Tender process and contracting. So evaluate bid evaluation process. What is our process? What is our evaluation process? Do we have a process? Who is responsible for that process? Who's in charge of it? Is that process complete? Does it cover all the steps, all the, let's say, regulatory requirements, or the, let's say, risk and control governance requirements that we have, etc. Timing, criteria, completeness, and approval transparency. Again, this is a key point that they keep repeating, as you see. It's very important to be transparent about who's making decisions, because usually we have more than one person making decisions. Review, and I'm not stressing the point enough here. What we as internal auditors learn when we have a group of people taking decisions is that usually people don't feel like they are really let's say, they're really responsible for what they're doing. Like it's like they don't take it personally. It's like when a group is taking decisions, the responsibility is spread all over the group, which might lead to taking wrong decisions in some cases. Review control assurance requirements of management, such as service auditors report. This is like a standardized report in the US, and reporting on controls as a service organization organization. This is again US related. So let's say regulatory requirements. Assess the project's team experience and capability as well as whether it's resourced appropriately to meet the need. What team? Our team. Now, this is not related to the service provider. This is our team, the team at our organization that is in charge of the bidding and contracting process. Evaluate whether risk management, legal, human resources, and finance functions are involved as needed. And I would add to these and internal audit. Perform due diligence reviews or assess management's review of provider operations. Due diligence, we need to make sure we do such a review. Either we do it or management does it and we review that assessment. Consider ongoing or periodic evaluations conducted by other assurance providers other than the internal audit. Okay, let's continue. Implementation and transition. And I would like to remind you here of the 20/80 rule. This applies to a lot of situations. It's not like a science, but let's say it works in a lot of work situations. Implementation of any IT project is 20% of the project. If things go right for the other 80%, that 20% is very easy and usually goes smoothly without much problems. But if things go wrong here, let's say here, we're definitely going to get into trouble. So this is the 80%, along with this, and this is the 20%. It looks like this is the difficult thing, but actually this is the easiest thing if we have proper planning ahead of implementation. If we don't have proper planning ahead of implementation, things will definitely go wrong when we're talking IT outsourcing. Perform a pre-implementation review to ensure the project is following standard disciplines. There are standard ways of doing IT projects. Let's say we're developing an application. There is a standardized, disciplined method, or not just one method, methods of development. We need to make sure we are implementing or we are using such a method before we implement. If we go here, if we find out that it's not like very clear what method is used, it will be very difficult in the future to fix errors, to straighten things up. So this is very, very important. This is the key point before implementation. Review contingency plans if transition is not affected appropriately. You see, we still haven't implemented. We're still preparing for implementation. Determine whether risks and actions are identified, mitigated, and escalated to stakeholders appropriately and promptly during the implementation process. So let's say in English, in pure English, if things go wrong, who should we tell? That's it. If things go wrong, who should we tell? Who is responsible when things go wrong? What should we do if things go wrong? This is the question we're trying to answer here. Ascertain whether go no-go, like approve, don't approve decisions are governed properly and based on reliable information. Let's say a bank is implementing a new system, like a complete system. They used to use system A. It proved to be, let's say, no longer relevant for the current size of the bank. So they're moving towards using system B. And they decide to implement the system one branch at a time. So they implemented in branch 1, then 2, then 3, etc. When they implement in branch number 1, someone should take a decision like, are things going okay now? Like we have implemented the new system in the branch. Someone at the branch of the bank will take the decision like, is it okay? Is the system running as we want it or as planned or not? Someone is going to take that decision. Who is that person? And what is the criteria for taking that decision? This is really, really important. It happens a lot that usually management don't have time. So they don't test the system properly. That's number 1. Number 2, they don't have a criteria for testing the system. They don't know how to test the system. They don't test all the functionalities of the system. So they take the decision like, yeah, we approve, the system is working properly. And after 2 months of operations, problems start to rise. It's normal to have problems after implementation within a certain range. After that range or beyond that range, it becomes very difficult to, let's say, fix those problems and get rid of them. So this is really, really important. Assess whether management has performed the appropriate testing before supporting the go-live decision. Again, similar to what I have explained now. Determine whether appropriate stakeholders are involved and informed. Again, think of internal audit. Think of an organization implementing a new application without the knowledge of the IT department or without the knowledge of the legal department. Things could go wrong a lot in those cases. Determine whether reliable information for decision making is available to the project management and senior management. Reliable information, again, for decision making. When, let's say, again, let's go back to the manager taking this decision to approve the system that was implemented in his or her branch. What is the reliable information that that manager requires to take the decision? We need to identify that information and have it available to the decision maker and the project management, of course. So that's implementation and transition. So to summarize what we have covered so far, we have evaluated the service providers. We have taken the decision here to go with a specific provider, or we have set up a process for selecting a service provider. We have a clear process for contracting, like how and what to write in the contract. And then we have implemented the new system, or we have transitioned from an old system to a new system. And now we need to monitor the new system or service and report on what's happening. So monitoring and reporting, and understand how provider performance and compliance with the contract will be assessed. So we have here how. How are we going to decide, are things going as planned or not? We should have criteria for that assessment. Evaluate the reliability of metrics that are designed and used to manage risk regarding IT operations, changes, and security. Evaluate, and then here we have reliability of metrics. The metrics that we are measuring, how reliable are they? Assess how concerns and areas for improvement will be communicated and leveraged to improve current and future operations. Let's go back to my previous example with the fresh new HR manager and the well-established scary financial manager. They implemented a new system in the company, and the HR manager is not really happy with the new system. There are many features that it doesn't cover, and she has a lot of concerns. If we let politics decide, none of her requests will be taken seriously. So we need to have a certain method, a certain process of reporting what should be improved and concerns. So concerns, we mean here problems or things that could go wrong in the future. These are not problems now, but they could be problems in the future. So let's say risks, problems, concerns, or risks, and improvements. If we don't have that process, politics will decide what will be implemented. Ensure the outsourcing activity is part of the audit universe and risk assessed routinely. So the whole activity, the whole outsourcing activity should be auditable, should be part of the audit universe. Determine how internal audit is alerted to changes in relationships in the future. So communication about changes, like we have, let's say, contracted with a service provider, and then after 6 months we changed the contract. So they have new responsibilities. Internal audit should be at least informed of those changes in the contract, and in other cases, changes in the service provider. Like we have changed the service provider from company A to company B. Assess performance against KPIs, key performance indicators, established during the planning phase. So this is the final thing when it comes to monitoring, which is the actual assessment, like assessing the performance of the system or service that we are outsourcing. Renegotiation. When we outsource any service, even when we have, let's say, suppliers that we rely on for, let's say, providing material for us, we usually witness what they call slack, where, okay, this company has become our customer, they rely on us, they rely on our service. They can't go with someone else. It's very difficult for them to convert to another system. So we don't really have to work that hard. This is how not all service providers, but let's say this is common. So we need to have always option B, plan B. We need to let the service provider always feel like, no, we could go with someone else if the service is not up to the level that we expect. So we need to be able always to renegotiate, either with us, like keep the same provider with better, let's say, conditions, keep the level of service up to the expectations that we have, and if things don't work well, go with a different provider. This is key because when we become when we rely on the service provider and that service provider fails, we fail with them. Understand the strategies and information needed to ensure optimal future negotiations. So what should be our, let's say, development strategy? What should be, like this is from the very beginning. For example, we could be developing what they refer to today as a modular system, where the system is broken into parts that could work independently. Let's say this is one of the, let's say, more recent strategies for IT projects. So we should be aware of this from the very beginning, so that we develop our new system or application in that specific way, so that we don't have to work with one service provider. We can work with 10 service providers, and if in that case we know we are diversifying our risks. So that could be one of these strategies. Understand reversibility and monitoring or performance results. We need to know if we decide to go back to the system we had before, what could happen? What are the risks of, let's say, stopping the system or this service and going with a different one, or going back to the one that we had earlier? Ensure that experts and process owners are driving renegotiation improvements. So we contract with the service provider. The renegotiation process should include ways of improving the contract itself, so that we get, let's say, we always get the optimal service from the service provider. And for that, we need experts who know how things go. Ensure that relevant dates for audit involvement are considered in the annual risk assessment process. And this is important because we need to be aware that if we, let's say, developing an application, sorry, all my examples are on developing applications, because this is, let's say, the major type of services usually. So we need to know when, like as an internal audit function, we need to know the stages of implementation, let's say, or the stages of development, so that we can interfere, or we can monitor, we can audit at the right time. If we do things too late, they're useless. And in some situations, we might be hindering other people's work. We might be delaying people's work by interfering in a time that is not appropriate. Ensure that adequate, accurate historical information and performance measures are available. We need information in order to assess. If we don't have information, historical information, we can't renegotiate. We can't know what we need in the future if we don't know how things happened in the past. Like, we need numbers on, let's say, availability, like percentage of the availability of the system over the last, let's say, 6 months. Was it available 90% of the time, 95%? How many service how many times did the service stop, and what are our expectations for the future. When we are renegotiating, we might put, let's say, stricter requirements for, let's say, how often should the system be up and how often it should be down. If we don't have the numbers, we can't negotiate that point. And finally, we have reversibility. Do we have contingency plans in case that's, let's say, the new service does not work, which could happen if we don't plan things ahead? Evaluate whether management has quantified the estimated costs and likelihood of failure. We need it to be quantified so that it's clear for everyone what are the stakes. Determine whether failure has been considered in the business case and return on investment needs. So failure has been considered in the business case at the very beginning when we're taking the decision. Did we take into consideration the case of failure and the costs? Ask whether management considered the use of other providers effectively to avoid unnecessary dependencies. I think I've covered this earlier. We shouldn't be too reliable on one provider. We should have options in case of failure. Determine how management evaluated the provider's viability. Internal audit may need to confirm or evaluate the reliability of that evaluation. As Kamal mentioned, how reliable is the service provider? How competent are the personnel that they have? What is the level of, let's say, technology that they have? And we need to evaluate that. We need management to evaluate that viability, and we need to review that evaluation. Ascertain whether the trigger points to initiate or consider changes in the provider are understood and pre-defined. And this is usually a point where problems rise between companies and service providers. What is the, let's say, the threshold? Where is the line where we go, this is not acceptable? Let's say system availability. Is it okay for us for the system not to be available for 2 hours, for 2 days, for 2 weeks? What is the threshold? Of course, this is not on one just availability. This could be on a lot of aspects in the project. So we need to have these predefined, and usually we need to have them in the contract so that the service provider is liable in case there is a liability. Consider other risks that might drive the need for bringing the process back in-house, including macroeconomics, political and geographical concerns, and determine whether these have been assessed. And like if we, let's say, think like geographical concerns, let's say our organization worked with a company from India. We work for a US organization. We contracted with an Indian company to develop a system for us. And the US decided to cut relations with India. They decided to boycott Indian banks, for example. We no longer can work with an Indian company. We can no longer send them money. So that would be like a political, geographical concern that we have to take when let's say when the service provider is usually in a different geographic location. This is the case for a lot of companies because they usually look for, let's say, companies that are less expensive. So they go for Indian, Chinese, I don't know what other countries are usually the source of outsourcing. Determine whether the provider has sound, sustainable business continuity planning capabilities. So we need to ask the service provider, do you have a contingency plan? We need to see that plan. We need to see it. Is it sound? Is it up to date? Does it make sense? Is it sustainable? If not, we might require them to develop such a plan, or we might go with a different provider. Determine whether the contract has an appropriate exit clause. Exit clauses might, as we said, what is the threshold, and in case of, let's say, we decide to end the contract. Let's say we have a 5-year contract with a service provider, and we decided to not renew that contract. So we will need a lot of files, a lot of information. We need to get, let's say, our data from that service provider and provide all of that to, let's say, a new service provider, or we need to bring it in-house in case we decide to go in-house. We need to have those things clarified in the contract. When should we expect the information, the data? Like, should we give them 1 month, 2 months, 5, 6? When should we expect, how much time they need, let's say, to provide us with documentation, with data itself, etc. And of course, the financial aspects of ending the contract. So these will be that we have covered all the risks and controls in the life cycles. And now we're considering risks and controls from the viewpoint of the service provider. So far, we've been thinking about the situation as a company who wants to contract with a service provider. Now, what if we, as an internal audit, work for an organization that provides IT services to other companies? What should we take into consideration? Risks and controls. Poor service quality. This is usually the main reason for problems. The service that we are providing is not up to the level of expectations of our client. Unacceptable number of failures and errors. Unacceptable. So failures and errors are expected, but they should be within a specific limit. Do we have measures? Do we have a way of measuring our service quality? Do we have thresholds for what is accepted and what is not accepted? This is how we as internal auditors should think of this point. Service disruption and failure to meet the organization's client obligations. The client is, let's say, our client is a bank, and the bank expects his system to be working 99% of the time. And we cannot do that. We cannot provide that level of service continuity. That would be a key reason for failure. Privacy and confidentiality issues. By nature of our work, we will have a lot of data and a lot of personal data saved. We need to have a clear policies, procedures, etc., processes on protecting the privacy and confidentiality of that information. Slow response, reduced system availability, integrity, questionable integrity of information, and compromised security and confidentiality. Slow response when it comes to the client's requests. That let's say they send us an email, they call us, they tell us about the problem. How fast do we respond and solve that problem? We need to have that measured. We need to know exactly what is happening in terms of how fast or how slow we respond. Service provider technology and system architecture issues related to scalability, capacity, and performance. Do we have the capacity to provide the service? Like we're contracting with a new client, and that client is expecting a certain amount of, let's say, working hours of us every week, let's say. Do we have that capacity? And do we have the architecture, the servers, the networks, etc., to cover what is requested? Inability to maintain appropriate internal operational and IT controls, and meet regulatory and industry requirements such as the EU Data Protection Directive. This is relatively new. If you would visit websites for companies that are based in the European Union, and you go and read the privacy policy, of course no one does that, you will see how detailed, if that, let's say that website is adhering to the requirements, you will see how detailed the information is on what data they collect, how they collect it, where they save it, how you can retrieve it, how you can ask them to destroy it, etc. So do we have controls over those issues or not? Poor disaster recovery and business continuity capabilities, user entity expenditure and effort to find an alternative service provider or to bring the outsourced service back in-house. So we need to always be aware, is our client considering moving to another provider? Is our client thinking about developing the service that we provide in-house? We need to be aware of these. In some cases, one of our clients could be, let's say, delivering, let's say, 30% of our income. So if we lose that one client, we lose 30% of our income. In some cases, it might be 50%, 70%, when we have like a small service provider working with a very large company. So we need to have that considered in all cases. So these are the considerations from the service provider point of view. And that's it. These are all the topics that we have in this G tag. Let me just quickly go over risks and reasons. As we have seen, we have like discussed reasons briefly, and throughout the life cycle, we have covered the risks point of this G tag. So briefly, IT, let's say, is a very complicated issue. IT projects are usually long; they take years, and during that like long period of time, a lot of things could change. Systems might go, let's say, outdated by the time they are ready for implementation. A lot of things could go wrong. There are a lot of variables involved. So planning is the key. If you don't have proper planning, things will go wrong. So that's it for today. We hope to see you in our next webinar. Take care and bye-bye.